This video is to post on a channel called Baldy's Thoughts. I'm going to post it on mine too. It replicates some of my work, but it's based on a comment that I made on a video on his where he asked me to go ahead and elaborate more and go ahead and share the video. So I want to thank him. I'll post a link below to his channel. This is going to be long, drawn out. It's kind of complex, but I've got to tell you something. To understand it, you have to spend the time. It's really not a simple thing. I'm going to do my best to compress some things here. The entire, the whole monomyth sequence and things like that are really not understood. People today don't know what that is. They don't even recognize it, but they don't use the right thought process to see it. So in this video, please stick with me. I'm going to try to cover a number of things. I really want to focus on how the Babylonian creation myth became the precursor to Genesis, and that there's things going on that they're sharing that I want to look at here. But I'm going to simultaneously be comparing it with other works demonstrating that commonality in the monomyth, what is called the monomyth, but is actually a mono-template pattern, is actually there and what it is. In this video, I'm going to do my most definitive to date comparison between the Babylonian creation epic from the 7 tablets of creation, the Enuma Elish, and the Jewish creation story Genesis. Now, I've made this comparison before, as have other people, but I've dug deeper into interpretation, and I can now offer up 3 different methods. One of them is a direct verse comparison, one of them is a conceptual teaching comparison, and the third is a numbering pattern that is in the background that we can share, that we can look at and see that the two are sharing. So what we're going to understand when we're done looking at this is somebody in the background knows that this is being created to manage a population. There's something very purposeful in here that lets us know that incredibly intelligent people in the background put this together, but they did so in such a way with a very fine structure thousands of years ago that we don't see it today, but we can expose it. Okay, I'm an independent researcher that has been focused on this for years. I have got so much into this, I can tell you that it's incredibly deep, and that's why we don't see it. It's going to take a while for me to unfold this for you. What I want to say right at the front, though, is if you look at the Enuma Elish, the 7 tablets of creation, that's it. There's 7 tablets. It's fairly short. You look at Genesis, you go to 50 chapters. Whoa, that got very big. What are we going to do? How do we manage that? First of all, if you read through Genesis, and I'll show this through here, in the Babylonian creation myth, it's not a monotheism, it's a polytheism. When we get to Genesis, we're going to find out that from chapter 1 all the way to chapter 11, it's a combined polytheism and monotheism. It is not a strict monotheism until we get to chapter 12. So chapter 1 through 11, all the way up to the Babel story, that was original. We're going to see that there's 2 creation stories from 2 different authors. The first one has that God said there would be, and then there was. God said there would be, then there was. It's this repeating process going on, and then it goes into a smooth flow in the second one. There's some overlap issues. Have you ever noticed when you go read the flood story, Noah is told twice what to bring? There's 2 callings. There's 2 creations, there's 2 callings. Those are 2 template beginning points right there with some changes put into them. When I go through this, I'm going to leave everything from chapter 12 on out. That came about later. The first part of Genesis was coexisting with the Babylonian creation epic, the Enuma Elish. That's where we're going to make the comparisons. Chapter 1 through 11. Let me make sure I quote 3 examples here. This is from the King James Version. This is just to show you. Genesis 1:26. And God said, "Let us make man in our image after our likeness." 6:2, that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. So here we have God's sons coming down and saying, man's wives are beautiful. I'm going to go down and take wives from them. That's not a monotheism. And then 11:7, the Babel story. This is the last place it appears in the Torah. And I don't know anywhere else. This is it's from 12 on. It does not do this anymore, but up to here it does. Let us go down there and confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. This is the story when everybody was working together and everybody was one language and one speech. There was world peace, and they were trying to climb up to God, and God said, yeah, forget that. Make them all become tribal animals out there. Okay, this is the last place where that happens. I just wanted to show you that that is indeed there. This is the verbiage in the King James Bible, the King James Version. What's important to note here is that there's something else going on. Not only are they coexisting, but the Jews are separating from the Babylonians. And what is the Tower of Babel except for Babylonia? We're building a new Babel. It's an older time. It's an older place. Religions are coming online. They're beginning to morph, and they're not online completely yet as to what they are. They start off as polytheisms. Even Judaism, you can see, starts out that way, but it morphs into a monotheism. It continually is adjusting as it moves from place to place, and the population changes, and as civilization changes. And it morphs to a certain place. It works for a certain people. Okay, so, but again, somewhere in the background, I'm going to show you, when you look at this, you're going to go, holy smoke, somebody in the background that's Babylonian and Jewish knows something that the average person on the street doesn't know. But this right here in the material is the separation from another religion, another people, another place. The Babel, Tower of Babel. Then you got the ziggurats out there that are destroyed. It looks like it's a part of your culture. Oh, that must have really happened. That's how that works. People say, the story of Jericho happened. They found the city. You go, well, you make a monomyth. You look around and go, there's a city to use for our story. It's in our local area. You grab Jericho. It doesn't mean that it happened. It means that that's when they made the story. Okay, and you know what? I'm going to post this on another channel. I got an invitation from somebody to do this. So I normally wouldn't say this because my viewers already know what I'm about. But to me, something is in here that is nested, that is very mentally interactive. There's something in here that is what I find is basically a template that is there. It's called a monomyth, but there's something different. It's actually a mono template. The myths and the religions are all different. There's a template that they're all using instead. And that template works on the human life cycle. And I've interacted with this template and changed my life. So I've got very, I would say, experiential knowledge of the interpretation of this material. It is incredibly old. Nothing in here is going to be treated as supernatural. Tiamat is not going to get ripped apart and become the new part of the sky and the below and all that. All those things are happening. They're mythical stories, but they're meant to carry a teaching. There's something in there, but it needs to be interpreted. Imagine Aesop's fable and arguing over whether or not the tortoise and the hare race actually happened without ever sitting back and going, you know what, there's something in there. That's the same way this material is. They're arguing over whether or not it really happened when in truth, step back and look. The story's a carrier. We interpret it. We're going to find something interactive in there for each of us individually. That's what we need to bear in mind. So as we go through this, people that have this very supernatural bent, no, not my realm, not at all. This is something that they're making stories up for a superstitious people, but there is something in here for the intelligent individual that can mentally interact with it. It's not for everyone. Okay, let's look at the 3 comparison methods. One of them, everybody falls into this and goes, those sound the same. This one is so shallow, it's easy to see, but it's not very convincing. Let's take a look at it. Here we have an example from the King James Version. And Adam called his wife's name Eve, because she was the mother of all living. From the Enuma Elish, Tiamat, the mother who gave birth to all. So we can see right there that there's an Eve, the mother of all, Tiamat, the mother who gives birth to them all. That's a direct comparison. Okay, that's where they sound exactly alike. Now, I'm purposefully putting the King James, the Jewish stuff first, just because I think most of us are Western, and that's what's going to get people's attention. Understand that the Babylonian stuff is older than the Jewish material. The Jewish material is being derived from the Babylonian material. All right, without going through the entire Enuma Elish, I'll just talk through a couple of things here. This is how I'm going to be doing the comparison where things are not that visible. This is where it gets tricky and where it starts becoming more solid as to the fact that they're actually sharing something. Okay, God Apsu, the creator. It was then the first being Apsu who was their source. Okay, we get down here, we're going to find out that there is a problem, that there's a officer Mumu who's a bad guy that is actually, let's see what he did. He chanted a chant, put up a spell, and a bounding sleep overcame Apsu, and he became pacified. So while the officer Mumu, his advisor, was left in a trance, he forced Apsu down under his feet and crushed him. What? This is really weird. The creator just got taken over and run out by an evil force. We don't see that happen in the Bible at all. However, if we move along here, we're going to find out that as Marduk comes into place, the called hero comes around. I'm going to just be brief on this part so the video doesn't get too long. We're going to find out that Apsu returns as waters where Nu emerges from and everything. So there's a point there where Apsu disappears when the problems begin and then reappears when it's time for the healing to begin. And you know what? I interpreted that too much. When it's time for, in the story, the destruction to begin, when it's time to destroy the evil force, or when it's time to destroy the evil planet, that is what I mean. That is a healing when it's interpreted. But without it being interpreted, if you look at the story, that's the sequence, the pattern you're seeing. What do we find in Genesis? It doesn't do that, does it? Here's what happens instead. Right after Cain and Abel happen, God just disappears. Gone. Nobody takes him away. Nobody traps him or anything. God just hikes off. Disappears until when? Chapter 6, the world's gone bad. It's time to destroy it and call Noah. So we have Apsu, who'd been trapped away, coming back into the story when it's time for Marduk to go on the destructive adventure. And we have in Genesis, God returning when it's time for Noah to be called and go on the destructive adventure. So we have the called heroes and God returning at that time. In the meantime, how God was taken out of the picture or whatnot doesn't matter. What matters is the fact that during this time frame for the story, God was not available. God was ineffective. That is what we're looking for that is in common between the two. Now, that's layer number 2. That's the interpretation process. That's looking at things and going, wow, that's a deeper level. I did not see that one. You have to know some things. Now, the called hero I just mentioned, Marduk and Noah. Let's see what happens if we take the Enuma Elish. How many times does Marduk's name appear? Okay, we've got it up here, the Babylonian creation myth, the Enuma Elish. And if I come over here and put Marduk's name in, we see that Marduk is repeated exactly 41 times. Is that significant? Looks kind of interesting, but no, who cares? Until we do something that's interesting. Go to Genesis. If I come over here and look for Noah then, we see that Noah's name is repeated 41 times. Now, that could be a fluke. That's only one, but I'm going to tell you as we go through this, we're going to find repeat after repeat after repeat. At some point, you will be left to your own, coming to the conclusion that there's something that is happening there that we just don't know of. If you can imagine having your best hobby in the world and you know all of the pieces and parts and how many bolts and screws and nuts and whatever, all different sizes of things, imagine that it's times our antiquity. And this represents the best technology you have. You don't read, you don't write, there's no books. You have these memorized and you know them that well. You would know how many times they're repeated. There's something in here that is so deep that we've lost access to it because we just read it. We just read it. Plato said that the advent of reading or the printing, no, writing and copying and continually producing print. They were not printing at that time, but writing itself and the ready availability of books for people to read is what caused there to be a dumbing down. And the reason he said was because now when you talk to somebody about something at a deep level, they didn't have it memorized. They would have to go read it. Instantly, there was this shallow understanding that did not go to the depths of something. If you're just reading it shallow, it doesn't matter. But if you're trying to find these codes in there, the verbal codes, if you don't have it memorized, you will not have access to them. You will see I have to use the computer. And without using the computer, this is lost to us. I mean, what we're doing here is circumventing our lack of capacity to interact with the material in the manner that they did thousands of years ago when it was playing out in their minds. It's something that's very deep. It's very big. I need to get your attention as quickly as possible. But the stuff is so deep and so big, you can't be very quick with it. It is so difficult for people to hook into today. On my channel, I got people that go, within 30 seconds, I can't understand you, I'm gone. Well, then you're never going to understand it. They were spending their lifetimes with it, not 30 seconds. That's just all there is to it. If you don't understand it, it's not for you to understand. There is something there. And for all the people that repeatedly tell me there is no myth in there, go talk to so-and-so, I'm going to tell you right now, if you need to tell me to go talk to so-and-so, that tells me you can't see it. And you're relying on somebody else to tell you whether it's there or not. If you can't see it, it's not for you. It's there for those who can see it. All right. What we're going to do is understand before we move into it that there is a creation, but this is what it finally breaks down to. It's made on a template. It's called a monomyth, the Joseph Campbell thing. There's some steps in there, but that is not complete. What there really is if you were to look at the monomyth from Joseph Campbell, it starts with a calling and a denial. And that really picks up at a time in an individual's life where you're fit to be tied. You just stop and say, what the hell is my problem? It's me. I've got to fix my life. That's when the hero's journey begins. That's when we begin to turn inward. And there's a template that follows. There's a calling. Not many people are going to do it. There's a refusal of the call. Oh my God, I got to make all these changes. I don't want to do it. There's a supernatural aid, which is really understanding what to do. You've got memories and perceptions that you're living through. And if you don't resolve those, they're going to just be part of your life. They're going to be the demons that live inside of you unless you go make friends with them. Then they'll cease to act out. We have to resolve that stuff. Resolving the odd against your brother so that your Father who sees in secret rewards you in secret. All of these are mental processes that have to do with that up there. Then after learning what to do, we have to change the frequency of our perception so that's magical stuff. It's not really magical. What you have to do is forgive. Truly forgive in order to not be living through the emotional state of the way you have it stored. The memories. Now, I don't like this term but because of what it has become today, but when you have an emotional state around a memory and you do the healing, the emotional state changes. You have literally changed the frequency in the same way you might have changed the frequency of a tone that was irritating and it's now pleasant, or a smell that was bad that now is good, or something like that. Same thing happens. You're changing the frequency of an emotion. However, so many New Age people are using that frequency thing and listening to tones thinking they got something. They got the frequency stuff messed up. The way to determine whether or not you're healed is just think of the memory. How does it feel? That's the way it's stored. And if it doesn't feel okay and you want it to feel better, you must change the way you perceive it in order to change the way you feel about it. That is not a magical process, but it sure the hell is hard. The crossing of the threshold is the first threshold is turning into the mind. We can all do that. We can all turn to our memories. But there's another threshold in there that's a bad threshold. The Red Sea, the clashing rocks in the Argonautica. Suddenly there's a very dangerous one where the bigger work has to happen. And that's the place in your mind where you go, okay, yes, I can talk about my memories, but this bundle over here, those are secret. You don't get to those ones. That right there is the problem. That's actually, what is that? That's the shadow. That's the mote that's in the eye. All of that right there has to be resolved. Early on, they're not teaching it in that style, but they're continuously repeating it. And this is the template that this is built upon. In fact, just quickly look at it. If you're familiar with this, I want to point it out to you. If not, it'll just be something strange. This is the 17 stages of the Joseph Campbell monomyth. There's our call to adventure. There's our refusal of the call. I don't want to. Supernatural aid. You better know what to do. Crossing the threshold. I'm turning inward. Belly of the whale. I'm in my head. Road of trials. Yeah, I'm going to be struggling with my issues. Meeting with the goddess. This is meeting with your inner self. This is the person you want to meet up with that is you've packed full of memories and pain and hurt that it's just acting out. This is your inner self that is saying, what the hell have you done to me? I'm going to give you turmoil in your consciousness because of everything you've done to me in life. We have to resolve that. Temptation, yeah, weird stuff here. This is a part right here. If you're on the Buddha monomyth or the Jesus monomyth, you can see this temptation right here. The Buddha gets done meditating under the Bodhi tree, and the first thing that happens, he's tempted by Mara, the temptress, trying to bring him off course. Jesus gets done, belly of the whale, 40 days in the wilderness, and he's tempted by Satan. So here's that element right here. You can see that on the template, the temptation. Your atonement with the Father. Okay, this is where, let's stop for a second and talk about the Father. This is where God disappeared. We're now reconnecting with the Father. In fact, I said that wrong. There's multiple templates. As I said, this is the healing template only. The monomyth that Joseph Campbell, he didn't pick up the life template or the creation template. He just picked up when it's time to go in and start healing over again. So God disappeared in a previous template. In the human life template, God was gone. God is coming back here. This would be like if you had Genesis and you started right where Noah picked up. You didn't talk about the creation or Adam and Eve or anything like that, the lineage, none of that happened. The only thing that happened is Noah gets called to go on the adventure. That's what a monomyth is like. It picks up there. So where God disappeared doesn't show up in these. You have to know that this right here denotes when we're reconnecting with the higher awareness. When we turn inward, that's what we have to do. That is the true us. We're living through the memories. We need to know that we need to live from the higher awareness. That's hypercritical. That's the true us. I hate to maintain this replication, but if you went into Genesis 12, that's where the secondary stage really picks up, and Abram and Sarai is the same as Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. We're going to see that as we get into material here later on. And what we're going to see is that God puts them in a land of famine and then disappears. Same thing. And they have to go to Egypt and go, he gives up his wife Sarai to Pharaoh and gets slaves and animals in return. Where the hell did God go when things are going bad? You're going to see this as a common motif. God returns when Abram becomes Abraham. That's when the calling begins. That's when our early self transitions, Abram and Sarai, transitions to our second self, Abraham and Sarah. God returns then. You're going to see it commonly. There's something that is there, and it's called the higher awareness. People call it all kinds of different consciousness, Christ consciousness, things like that. I don't like those terms. They're limiting. There's one thing, and that is a higher awareness that doesn't belong in any religion. All of them are teaching this. They have it in their own words, but if you're still using their verbiage, you haven't made it universal yet. But you at least understand that it's what is being taught by your masters. Anyway, okay. Imagine this. When you're sleeping at night and you've got that turmoil going on, and there's a voice from time to time periodically that steps in that is disconnected from your feelings, that's telling you, hey, just go to sleep. There's nothing you can do tonight. And when that voice is talking to you, it's in your head, but you don't feel the emotions at that time. There's a disconnect there. That's the higher awareness. We can get there in the daytime. We can get there at any point in time, but that's a point in time you look at and you realize this is happening. My head's in turmoil. I can't resolve these issues, but sometimes there's something coming in that's unsolicited that's trying to address me, that is somehow disconnected from the feelings. That's God. We lived through that in the beginning. As life went on, it goes away. That's a natural process. Whether you call it trapped away by the early self or it just disappears, it doesn't matter. That's the higher awareness. We don't live through it. We need to live life and experience life. We're going to live through the memories. Later on, when we wake up, we go, oh crap, I'm living through my freaking memories, and I hate that. I've got to resolve that and rise above them through forgiveness, and that's exactly what happens when the return happens right there. So, the interpretation has to happen in order to really see that they actually are the same story, more so than they look like if you don't interpret them. All right, very quickly here, just so as not to spend too much time with it, here is the hero Jason's quest with the Argonauts. Okay, so if we go through here, we're going to see that there's a start at steps along the way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it goes through there. This is following the monomyth pattern. Number 1 is where the adventure begins, but this is the calling. Jason is saved out as a child. He's sent off for supernatural aid. When it's time to go get his kingdom, it's time to go get his kingdom. That represents us. We're going off. If we're a certain person, a certain personality, then we're going to live normal life. But at some point in time, we're going to say, whew, I'm going to turn inward, and we're going to start an adventure. And each of the islands along the way is going to represent a step that we have to take until we finally get up here and through the clashing rocks. And through here is where all the bad stuff is. There's a lot of adventure that happens along the way. Again, I don't want to get into it. It just takes too much time. They were doing this for their lifetimes. Imagine if your media and everything that we know about digital electronics, everything, even analog radio, everything is gone. Gone for a lifetime, nothing. These are incredibly big and important. We give them a cursory glance. This is an adventure that, if taken, leads one to healing from start to finish. But you have to know what it is. It's a human life cycle pattern that an adventure story is built upon that plays outward, that looks like it's outward. That's why we connect with these so much. Inner peace. Nirvana, the kingdom of heaven within, Canaan, the Holy Grail, the Golden Fleece, all of them, they're destinations that are at the end of a monomyth. They go back to the beginning of time, the beginning of our time, before we became what we became. That only picks up where Marduk comes in or where Noah comes in. What is the entire template going on before then? If when the calling is when I start turning inward to heal myself, what is everything that happens up to there? It's my life. Creation is my birth. The destruction is my early life. The things that go bad is me saying, I'm out of control. What the hell has happened? The calling and turning inward is now going in and to resolve that. So Joseph Campbell didn't identify things like cyclical pain. There is not a story in here without cyclical pain, whether it's continually having pain in childbirth, cyclical pain from the inner self, whether it's plagues, whether it's Greek myth, rolling a boulder up a hill. While you're in hell, you can never resolve it. It's up and down. Getting your liver eaten out, it grows back. Getting your liver eaten out, it grows back. Phineas, having his food defiled daily. Just before crossing the threshold, you're going to see elements in there that it's like this bad, nasty thing is happening just before they go through this threshold. Those are the things we're looking for. We're going to find that every teaching has got that in there, no matter what. It doesn't have to be big story form like this. In Buddha and the Dhammapada, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. And if a person's got a negative thought up there, pain follows them like a wheel follows the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. I'm the ox drawing the carriage through life. Pain follows me cyclically. That's the very first verse. Cyclical pain. If you got something bad up here, you're going to suffer for it. That's it. You go to the Tao Te Ching from Lao Tzu, and right off the bat, caught in desire, you see only the manifestations. It's not desire of things you want. It's all going to be mental still. Caught in what you're hanging on to, you're going to see the manifestation, the cyclical return to it. So whether it's in a story form that's got plagues happening over and over again over many pages, or chapters, or whether it's just saying a wheel is following you no matter what, or you're anchored to something, they're all telling you the same thing. What you're hanging on to, you're going to keep experiencing. That's what Joseph Campbell identified as the monomyth, because he saw those patterns. Oh, there's a crossing of the threshold. Somebody's going across the river Styx. Somebody's going across the Red Sea. Somebody's going through the clashing rocks. All of those are in the story pattern, and he's seeing that. He's seeing the sequence. So he's calling that the crossing of the threshold. And what that is we're on the adventure. That's turning in, and what do we have to do? We got to defeat the monsters. That's what a monomyth is. That's what these are. They're pathways out at the same time being held in verbiage outwardly that's going to take the people that can never understand it and cause them to live within a certain control set of parameters that is necessary for their civilization at that time. Now, this is difficult. You might ask, why am I doing all of that? If you interpret it, you will interpret that that is exactly what the Enuma Elish is doing, and that is exactly what Genesis is doing. However, it's conceptual. When you read them, if you don't understand what they're doing at the level of template, you go, those are radically different stories. When you realize they're conceptual and they're doing something identically, and you know how to interpret them, suddenly they come online as, yep, they're the same story. They really are. They're on the same template. Even though they're a different carrier, it's like it's like one gift in one box. Everybody gets the same gift, but every one of them is wrapped in different wrapping paper. And everybody that carries it around doesn't know there's something inside. They just love the wrapping paper. Oh, mine's prettier than yours. No, mine's prettier than yours. Mine comes from God. No, mine is better than your God. Yours is an idol. No. Meanwhile, you open it up and all that stops. You stop becoming tribes and you become human. Okay, so this is another important element that is a very key thing to do that is so difficult for people that it's incredibly foreign to do at first. Every one of these characters that are in this story is an aspect of you. Every one of them. From Apsu to Tiamat to Marduk to the gods that go bad, all of it is a part of who and what we are. It's made in such a way that it sounds like it's big outside, but ultimately it's in here. The gods that go bad here in the Enuma Elish and need to be destroyed, what do we have in Genesis? We have the sons of God who came down and have defiled the beautiful daughters of men, giving offspring to giants, and the earth is corrupt and needs to be destroyed. Conceptually, those are the same things. They don't sound the same. Those aren't gods. Those are God's sons. Those are what they are. What they represent is something different. They're analogs. So if you don't interpret them, they're not the same. If you do interpret them, they are the same. Like this. The Jews spent 40 years in the desert after crossing the Red Sea. Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness after his baptismal. Those don't sound the same, but they are. You've got a crossing of a threshold and then a 40, which is a time frame used by the Jews to denote till the time of healing, in a desert devoid of, or wilderness devoid of, quiet, peaceful places. You have to understand them that way, and that's up here. I've got to spend a time in my mind till I'm healed, devoid of this habit, whatever it is I'm doing. I've got to separate myself from it. That's what the hell it means. So these things are going to become interpretively thick. That means also you treat everywhere you go, you treat the material identically. But think about that for a second. This is why. Don't take my word for it. If there's a template that it's a human cycle, you start out, you're a baby, you're happy, you start having life experiences, it goes bad, it gets worse, it gets corrupt, you lose connection with your higher self. At some point, life is horrible. You might turn inward. If you do, you must cross a threshold. You must go address the things that are issues. All of these are very real possible. This is it right here. You live life, here's how it works. You want to heal, here's how it works. I don't care where you live in the world or what happened to you. This is the template right here. Now, flip that outward and create stories on it. That's why you treat them all the same. All those outer shells are just outer shells on one template. Go to the template. Never any deviation. That means when we come to Genesis, I am Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden in the beginning on day 7. When day 7 was done, creation was done, naked, unashamed in the Garden of Eden prior to first sin. This represents me as a child. I've been born. Here's the conditions. There's going to be cause and effect, cycles, things like that are happening. And there's facets to me. The female is even, well, that's going to be a little bit later on. The first thing that happens is you're told not to partake of either tree, the knowledge of the tree of good and evil or the tree of life. Nothing. Just stay there. It's like God wants you to just remain like this ignorant nothing in the Garden of Eden. That represents a time in our life where we are living through our higher self. We're little children. However, we're self-aware because there's male and female. That means we're conscious and we're subconscious. We've named a few things, which means we've learned enough basic skills to be able to communicate and have fun. First sin represents the idea that's first judgment. Judge not, lest you be judged, for the judgment with which you judge others. The mote that's in the eye, the accumulation. Every teaching is going to come around to the idea that what you've named and what you've mentally decided upon is going to be a part of what you are. And if you don't like what you are, you have to start unnaming some of the things that you've done. It's really the healing process. We don't know that. So early on, right here in the Garden of Eden, we're at that point where we have not had that life experience. First sin represents that. You're now not going to be happy. You're now covered up. Why? Because you're naked. What? Naked in the physical world means buck naked, right? In the spiritual world, what does it mean? Psh, I got nothing. Go ahead. What do you got on me? Not a damn thing. I don't have anything to hide. I am completely naked. This is spiritual. If I have a bunch of things that I'm covering, that I'm hiding, now I'm covered. I've got garments on. I feel shame. That's what happened there. We had life experience. Now we're covered up. We feel shame. What happens as a result? Cyclical pain is now going to ensue. The inner being is going to be subservient to the outer being. This is setting up a mental hierarchy. The wife will be subservient to the husband. The inner self becomes a product of the conscious decision-making and the mental experience that it assigns to the memories. Let me put that into different terms. Two people can have the exact same experience. One person goes, "Whew, no big deal." The other person goes, "I hate that," and it devastates their entire life. The conscious decision-making process is what created what it was. Then what happens? Life goes on. We're going to be told you're going to go live life and not experience it well. And then there's a division, the Cain and Abel. That's us. We divide. We can become one way or another. We go the bad way, and right there is where the God disappears as well. We've lost connection with the higher self. This is us. Then what happens? Life goes on. We get jobs. There's a lineage there. This is time goes by. We're just living life unaware, continually accumulating things as we go, till the point that we go, my world is corrupt. I want it destroyed. It's now time to turn inward. That's actually two templates. There's a creation. The first two chapters is creation. From then on is human life. From childhood up to the time where you need to go on a healing journey. Most people only get to that chapter 6. I look at the entire political scope of religious whatever it is in the United States, and I see the United States living at chapter 6 right there. And there's not going to be a Noah to come in and resolve things. This is going to be more like Plato's story. Atlantis just goes to the bottom of the sea and it never comes up. That's an odd one. Okay, I'm going to go, I got to be careful what I do here. Okay, so what happens then is the monomyth picks up. If we're going to the Babylonian creation story, it sounds different, but what happens is there's gods to begin with. The first are Lamu and Lahamu. This represents the Adam and Eve self. Lahamu is like a male and female version, like my name, Daniel and Danielle, or Dan and Danny, or something, two versions, Lamu and Lahamu, the male and the female of each person. That's us. We're Lamu and Lahamu. But then what happens as time goes on, the corruption happens. It's a different story. I don't want to get into it all, but okay, so I guess from a comparative perspective there, that's what I want to say about the stories. Okay, what I'm going to do is take a look at how a called hero can be identified here. And Marduk is really done that way. Noah is done in a very simple way. He was righteous. That's about all they said about Noah. He was righteous before God. So he was somebody that stayed connected with the higher awareness. Think about what that really means. We're going to interpret it. Here is somebody who has the capacity to connect with our higher awareness. That's going to be a brain type. When we, I'm going to go back to the Enuma Elish here, and this is in tablet, let me see here. I should have looked ahead of time, sorry. Tablet 1, still tablet 1. So Marduk is being called as a hero right in the beginning. Here's what we have here. Then the Lord came, who among all was the most judicious. There within the watery Apsu. See, that's where the creation comes from. The all, everything. We come from there. That's where we come from. That's where we return to. Brahma, Apsu. Did Marduk take his shape? Within the unsullied waters of the Apsu was Marduk born. So there's a part of us that's coming from the background somewhere. This is the same place where the Virgin Mary gives birth to Jesus in a later story. Here's a totally fun sidebar, but it just shows the commonality of this. Jesus is recognizable as a common monomyth, one that became idol worship by the fearful masses to make them think they will never die. What do we have here? Jesus is called as the Son of God, has supernatural powers, travels with hand-picked disciples, and seeks the kingdom of heaven within. Watch the pattern. Jason is called as the rightful ruler of the kingdom, has Hera for supernatural powers, travels with the Argonauts, and seeks the golden fleece. King Arthur is called as the only one who could get Excalibur, had Merlin for supernatural powers, travels with hand-picked knights, and seeks the Holy Grail. He was used for the first Star Wars trilogy, only for this first Star Wars, and that's why only the first Star Wars impact you the way it is, and the rest of them were like, yeah, whatever. Okay, Luke is called as the son of Vader, has the Force for supernatural powers, travels with special selected rebels, and seeks to save the Alliance and destroy the Death Star. There's a lot more. Meeting up with a goddess, Leia. There's much of it. Meeting up with the Father, Vader. Notice that they all feature a doubter or a problem in the midst of travelers. Judas, Lancelot, C-3PO, I forget the name of the spy on the Argo. It was Pelias' son. And you know what those... Think about that for a second. These all play out in your psyche. What does that represent? I know what I need to do. I know the right thing. I got balance. I got fairness. I've got all of these qualities. Those represent the different people in there that have different qualities. But there's one person that's a doubter. There's a part of us that goes, oh shit, I can't. Oh man, I failed. Oh, that's the element there that is the bad element. Okay. What else can we glean from these ones here? You know, there's this idea that Jesus went to that because he disappeared from the age of 12 to the age of 30 approximately, that he went off someplace and studied in India. There's videos, there's all kinds of stuff on that. People stake their lives on that stuff right now. It's a monomyth. Okay. Everybody disappears until it's time to go on the trip. Okay. Or they're trapped into something different. All right. Jason was saved out as a kid, and he starts on the adventure as a young man. Jesus saved out as a kid and starts out as a young man at the adventure. What are these adventures? These are the monomyth, or the sail to get the golden fleece, the ministry to go get the kingdom of heaven within. All of those are analogous. Moses is saved out as a kid and starts out as a young man. So all of them, there's a part of them as a children, then they disappear or they live a life somewhere like Moses with Pharaoh, but the calling doesn't happen until they're a certain age. They're not going off and training anywhere. This is the pattern of a monomyth. And that gap very specifically represents something in the life of every human being. And that is that time that we're living completely unaware, and most people will stay that way. They will always live unaware, thinking that whatever is out there and whatever I'm bouncing off is all there is. They don't understand that that's like a screen to the perceptions that they hold in their mind. They can't extract from that. So it becomes a very difficult process. If you can see that that's in the material, suddenly it all becomes very evident. Okay, so in any monomyth, your consciousness becomes whoever the cult hero is if you're taking the path. You pretend you're that person. You pretend you're Jesus. You pretend you're Jason. You pretend you are Moses, Noah, any of them like that. You pretend like you are that person and that you play all of this out in your mind. The Jesus one sounds sacrilegious, but it's made exactly the same way. It's carried in a shell differently for population control a lot differently. That's the difference. It still has the same damn inner pathway in it. They just made it so that they trashed it when they made it an idol worship religion. Christians don't follow the teachings. They don't. Okay, what I want to do is find some things about him. So perfect that his head was twice as lofty as any other god. Okay, now he's going on to describe, I just want you to think about brain types, introverts, INFPs, people that have high awareness and high intelligence. So perfect that his head was twice as lofty as any other god, rising high above them, he was the better by every measure. Both his arms and legs were well formed beyond comparison, so that it could not be fathomed, almost incomprehensible. This just means we're strong. It doesn't mean physical. Moreover, he possessed 4 ears to hear and 4 eyes to see. Okay, why is this? That's that brain type right there. You have a higher level of awareness, and your spatial awareness is bigger than other people's. You see more and you hear more. You conceive more, perceive more than other people do. The one about the flames when he opened his mouth, I kind of resist on. I think, I know when people, I'm doing my stuff and I do my best, and when people put critical stuff and they put things in the post, I don't just let it go. I usually just call them names and I'm cutting. It's like, you know what? If you're going to be that much of an asshole, I'm a nice guy. Come in. Are you going to act like that? I'm going to yank the rug out from underneath your feet so fast you're going to land on your ass and go, what is your problem? And I'm going to say, what the hell did you show up here for? Get out. Okay? I got an attitude like that. It's just wired in. I don't know if it's because of childhood that I don't have resolved or it's a part of the personality. It's like, nope, I'm not backing down. What I say, I see. What you say is bullshit. His 4 ears were also considerable of voluminous size, as were his eyes, which were capable of perceiving anything, being unsurpassed among the gods of exceptional build, having limbs which were mighty, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what we have right there is the description, an early description of somebody that later on you're going to be hearing things like many are called, few are chosen. Many stand outside the narrow gate where only the solitary will enter. Many carry the ark. Few ever look inside of it. There's going to be a constant idea in the background that there's not very many people that are going to do this. And right there in that description from the Babylonians, all of that right there, what I see from myself, just from a lifetime of working with other people, realizing that I just have more a different kind of a connection with the environment than they do. Sometimes I appreciate theirs. It's simpler and more fun. Mine can be like, whoa, I see too much. I know too much. But it's kind of I realize now that's a brain type and that there's something in this material. And that's why if you say it's not there, there's nothing there, you got to go talk to somebody. You're also the blind leading the blind. They're going to fall into the ditch. Not many people are going to find this. It's going to be a rare thing. And I kind of allude to this, but I can think of no other explanation other than to say brain types. When you find people that are birds of a feather that flock together, if you look at brain types, you're going to find they're the same kinds of basic people. And that the brain type that we're looking with was one that evolved as a something that couldn't disconnect, that had to get away, inside the group was too raucous. We're very introverted. You stand on the outside, but you're highly sensitive. You're very much the one that's watching the group's back. You're out there freaked out all the time, can't shut it off, can't get inside. We're stuck now in that modality, but that's what's happening. It's not necessarily a special person. It's you evolved to be, you better watch it because you're the first one going to get eaten, but you're also highly sensitive. That's what this is right here. That's that brain type. The thing that's so clever about Christian stuff is that it identifies bad people in there, but it doesn't quite, you don't quite understand that the people that are worshiping the religion are actually the Pharisees and the blind leading the blind and all of that they're actually who that is. They think, or that they're also standing outside the narrow gate. In all cases, they think that they're the good guys and the bad guys are out there. They don't realize that they are that person. This thing has an inversion to it that's pretty magical, but you got to get on the inside to see it happen. But it carries the way it does because of the kind of a psychological impact that it has. And of course, it is based in fear. We know that right from the get-go. A Christian says it's not based in fear. I will tell you, remove Christianity, stop believing in God. What's going to happen to you? What do you feel? It's based in fear. You're making decisions to not feel that fear. If you take that decision away, the fear is there. What's it founded on? Another perfect indicator to me of brain types, I've talked about it on some recent videos where there are certain Christians that say objective morality proves that God exists. And when you think that through, what you realize is that Jesus teaches you to walk a mile in somebody else's shoes and go to that they're not doing that. They can't get into somebody else's head. I look at that right there and think that the person is actually saying that the reason they know not to rape and murder for fun and do things like that just to have fun is because God exists. So that tells me right there that they can't put themselves in somebody else's head. I raised children, my girls. I never desired them physically, sexually. I protected them. I'm daddy. They look up to me like a strong man, not like somebody that was like, what a creep. I got to get away from that freak. Okay, there's different brain types going there. I can think of nothing but love and compassion and the way that they would feel and the way that I can help them feel good and empowered as opposed to put down. And what does that tell me right there? I got a different brain type than that person right there. They're not a called person. They are not. They're an evolved main group person that is not figuring out life. And they're letting you know by the way they talk. So what I'm going to do right here is just kind of go through a summation. In the beginning of both of the books, there's a creation that happens. And then what happens is that there's the development of people. And then at first everything is okay, but very quickly things go wrong, whether it's the gods becoming raucous or whether it's sinning and things going on. And eventually the sun's causing damage, causing impregnating. What are we doing? That represents that our early qualities have now been corrupted. My joy, my trust, my peace, my lovingness, all that kind of stuff. Now I'm like, up yours, fuck you, I hate you. All that kind of stuff is a part of us now. And we've lost that childhood innocence. We're never going to get that back. We can't get back to Eden. That's why it's guarded. We were in Eden then because we were ignorant. Now we're not ignorant. We have to get to peace with knowing things now that we didn't know then. So we're going to be stronger, but we're going to have a lot more skills than we did then. We had to go through that life experience. Both of them are doing that. When the called hero happens, this represents Marduk destroying the old, this corruption. Lady Huber was the repeated cycles of pain. She was creating all of the damage. And so that would be like the cyclical pain that's happening, where pain in childbirth happens all the time. Lady Huber is causing damage repeatedly. So both of them are holding the cyclical pain just before the called hero, just before, and in the Genesis story, we're being told right up front. But towards the end, in chapter 6, the world is a mess. It needs to be destroyed. So then what happens is a calling happens. Marduk, whose name is said 41 times, Noah, whose name is said 41 times. Both of those represent the called hero of the stories of the different genres of myth, religion. And, but they line up. And they both happen after a destruction. People would look at those and go, they don't sound the same at all. If you understand them conceptually in the way that I'm talking about them, they're identical. They're the same thing. But again, you have to know that conceptually. The destruction of Tiamat and the old gods represents the destruction of the old inner self and these things that became so powerful that they were called gods. The destruction of earth represents my life experience, and I have become corrupted by my life experiences and my choices, and now I want to turn inward. Only in understanding that they are conceptual story component parts that once stripped off of there and put into its mentally interactive state again, does it become something that is identical. And then you go, yep, that's it. I'm destroying my old self. After that happens, the higher awareness returns. There's a rebuilding that happens. Noah is what? He's now uncovered again. We started out uncovered in the garden. Then shame caused us to cover. The flood's over with. We're uncovered again. We've created a wine, a vineyard. This is not literal. This represents in our mind, we've drowned out everything that was there from the past. We've now created something new to live from. And from that new life, we've developed wine, something to drink that makes us feel good. And we're uncovered. We're naked, unashamed in our tent. That was a good thing. Ham wanting Shem and Japheth to cover us back up represents life goes on, and guess what? You took care of that one issue. Now you're going to think and go, I got something else that's bugging the hell out of me. I got to resolve that one too. I still have problems. It's not just one thing, it's a bunch of things. I become a product of a lot of issues. And when I get the big one done, I feel wonderful. But time goes by and I realize, you know what? That next one is there now, starting to take the place of that old one. And I've got to resolve that next. So that's what's represented in that story right there where it goes bad again. But if we leave that out, we've got two identical stories as far as a conceptual on a template. If you can read it that way, it needs to be interpreted in that manner. You have to understand that it's not a physical occurrence. It's a story made on a template that reflects my life. And in both cases, they're different, a little bit different. Cyclical pain. Lady Huber destroys everything. Oh, you'll have pain in childbirth. Maybe it's going to be plagues or something like that, or the stone. There's always that element there. Your food getting defiled daily. Okay, so I've got a comparison here. If you can wrap your head around this one, you got it. This is it's a great comparison right here between Greek myth and creation, Adam and Eve. Okay, what happens? Do you know the story of Prometheus? Here's what happens there. Zeus creates humans, creates humanity, and they're ignorant. They are primitive, and he wants them to stay that way. Prometheus, however, looking at the primitive human, says, those poor things, they're living like animals. They need to advance. I'm going to give them fire. And so he gives them fire, and that's not okay. And Zeus takes it away, gets it back. This process goes on, but what happens is that the humans do advance. They get fire, and in return for Prometheus giving fire to the humans, his punishment was to be chained to a hill in hell. I'm sorry, purgatory, bad island, something like that. Not hell. It's still an analogous term. It's a place of punishment, is what it is. Well, a eagle eats his liver out, and then the liver would grow back. It was painful. The Greeks thought the liver was the seat of emotion. So this eagle is eating out the liver. This powerful creature is eating out the emotion, and then it grows back and it eats it out again. What do you see right there? Cyclical pain. As a result of what? Is that the Adam and Eve story? God wanted Adam and Eve to not eat of the tree of good or evil or of the tree of life. He wanted them to stay ignorant. He wanted them to not learn. Zeus wanted humans to not learn. What happens? Eve partakes of it. She sins and goes anyway. Prometheus gives them fire. The sin is happening anyway. It's as if Prometheus took the place of the serpent. And what happens as a result is cyclical pain ensues. Do you see that those are the same template story? That's tricky. We have to know some more layers to it. That mental hierarchy. The conscious is the male. The subconscious is the female. The constant pain in childbirth represents what it is that continually acts out of us. There's layers of understanding this that makes it look like, okay, now that's cyclical pain from within me, or my liver getting eaten out because I hurt over and over again. Okay, now I get it. You see, God in the Genesis story wanting Adam and Eve to stay ignorant, but they go ahead and partake of something and move along anyway. He doesn't want them to do it. But what is it? One of them is a tree of life, the knowledge of good and evil. Why wouldn't you want knowledge, experience? That's what this is. The sin is that you've left your innocence behind. You didn't really sin. You're just going off and experiencing life. And as a result, you're going to have continual pain in childbirth. What do we have over here as a people? Not as Adam and Eve, but as who and what we are going to become. A bigger group of something. It's an analog still. In fact, back at the Enuma Elish, the gods that were born that became raucous, boom, right here, early self, we get out of control. That's it. Simple stuff. It is not a group of people. It represents our group of mind. What is up here, upstairs? More than one thing, presumably. That this right here, as it learns and experiences life, that its cyclical pain is going to happen as a result. And we see then that they become the same story element. We can find those in other places. Honestly, if you were just looking at the Jason and the Argonauts movie, you're going to see a point in the beginning where they're struggling to leave an island behind, depending on the version of women or the old gods. They struggle to leave that, and they finally do. Then they run into Phineas, where there's cyclical pain. The cyclical pain is represented in this element that Phineas is a seer that's been punished. He's put on that island. He has to live there. He gets food delivered to him, massive amounts of food on a daily basis. But before he can eat any of it, the harpies come down and they defile it. They goober it all up in some way that it becomes something that is a stench and completely unedible. So on a daily basis, Phineas is getting food brought to him and is having it destroyed. There's a line in a movie that's wonderful. It says, he's crying out after the harpies have defiled his food. "Oh, Zeus, I sinned one time. Why must you punish me every day?" Phineas tells them what to do, but they have to defeat the cyclical pain, which they do. And then they sail through the clashing rocks. So here we have represented a struggle to leave the past. We're doing so because of cyclical pain. And now you've got to cross this threshold that it's going to be difficult. You're barely going to make it, going through the clashing rocks. It might sound off topic, but it continually aligns things up. Let's go to Exodus for a second and see the exact same pattern in a different sounding story. We've got Pharaoh and Moses, and there's a point in time where the calling has happened and it's time to go. And Pharaoh is saying, "You can go. No, you can't. You can go. No, you can't. I changed my mind. Plagues come. You can go." It's survival. So we have two elements happening right here. Number one, you can go, no, you can't. There's a struggle to leave the past. Look at your own life and leaving something behind. The difficulty of it is being held in this wonderful story. You can go, no, you can't. You can go, no, you can't. And it's a struggle to leave the past. You very much try, and the plagues are happening. Cyclical pain is the reason you need to leave. Plagues are happening. I'm getting beat. I'm getting this. Something's happening. There's a story. I've got to cross a threshold. I finally escape and I leave. So Moses is us leaving our past, struggling to leave it, going through the Red Sea and barely making it in the same way that Jason went through the clashing rocks and barely made it. So those become difficult to see at first, but when you understand that they're conceptual elements, then suddenly you understand that there's something different going on. They are not at all historical, yet they are nevertheless meaningful, but you have to interpret them in a very specific way in order to get consistency across the board in what's happening. We're not looking to put in there what we want. We're looking to extract what some master put in. We got to go in objectively with a completely open mind. We can't plug in what we think they did. We have to ask them and sit down with an open mind. Okay. They both represent a story part where a time in life where your kids stay kids, don't learn, don't become corrupt, don't become those things. Stay innocent, stay as a child. But you know what? It doesn't happen. We go on to life and we have cyclical pain. Remember, Prometheus is a part of us too. We're learning. All right, I've done a lot of videos on this, but this is where it gets difficult. What I'm going to do now is talk about a numbering pattern that we don't know because we don't have the stories deep memorized. There's going to be word repeats like the Noah and the Marduk one that are going to be actually much more significant than what we're seeing. There's going to be a pattern of life experience, steps along the way, and they're going to align numbers with those steps. And then they're going to, for example, if we went to Genesis, day 7 aligned, if we took the two creation stories and put them side by side, day 7 would be at the exact same place that Adam and Eve are naked, unashamed in the Garden of Eden, right there on day 7. Then what happens is first, sin is the very next step. So if you took that and took that 7 right there and say, this 7 is going to continue to appear throughout the Bible a lot of times, It's repeated 3 times here. It's even overlapped in a weird way to make it end on verse 3 on the 2nd chapter. Somebody's trying to tell us something here. There's something in the numbering pattern that came about later by Stephen Langton. He's pointing something. He's Chester Copperpot. We're following puzzles. I'm serious here. Help me out, guys. You guys that are encoders, look at this stuff. You're going to find patterns in here. That 3-7 grid, 3 and 7 is going to appear all throughout the Bible continuously. All right, now admittedly, this again is just a huge big thing. This is something that is very complex, and it's taken me years to crack into this. It's something that is there. It's a number collection in Genesis. It's actually pretty simple once you figure it out. We're just so far removed from it. It has to do with number repeats. Now, this is I have to be careful. I'm going to have to glaze over this, and I just apologize. But there's the 3-7 grid that starts where aligns, and it starts beginning a stepped template pattern. These numbers are meant to replicate good and bad points along the template, where good things happen or where bad things happen. 3 and 7 are good numbers. That's going to be a weird thing. But if you look at these numbers that are collected right here, I'm just going to say that they're collected, and then you would have wine, nakedness, naked, uncovered, covenant, righteousness, righteous. This is just a small collection of nouns and verbs that are repeated exactly this amount of times. So they're giving you the weight of the analog by repeating it an exact amount of times. We get into first sin, 8, 11, which is 1 step over 7. We get to 11, which is 1 step over 10, 13, which is 1 step over 12, 21, which is 1 step over 20. If each of these represents a pure starting point, and they're collecting more numbers to spread it out so it doesn't look like everything is 3-7, 3-7, 3-7, 3-7 all the time, but it comes from this pool, the very next step up is going to be replicated by first sin or judging life. And if we look through, we would see Sodom is repeated 21 times, Adah 8 times, creature 13, Gerar 13. Okay, so this is really, they're encoding what the value is. I mean, you would look at naked and say, is that good or bad? I don't think it's good. Naked, I don't want to do that. But then you realize, oh, you know what? Naked is repeated exactly this amount of times. I don't remember which one, which means it is a good thing, that means spiritually naked. That means uncovered, unashamed. That means I've resolved my sin. Okay, got it. It means uncovered. It's something different than the physical world. This is how they're telling you what it really is. These numbers, these 22 numbers, are repeated over 6,052 times in the Bible. That's where the repeats happen. Then you're going to see things that happen that are oddball, but are like this. This is how it happens. Adam and Eve, 3 and 7. That's where it starts. Abram and Sarai. Abram's name is said 75 times in Sarai's. No, Abram was 75 when they started, and Sarai's name is repeated 17 times. If you go back up here to the list, what do we see? We see a 70 and a 5, they can be combined, and a 17. This is a pure start. That's a beginning. If we go to Isaac and Rebekah, Isaac was 40 years old. His name is repeated 80 times. And Rebekah was 30. If we come up here, we see our 40, we see our 80, and we see our 30. This is telling us by repeating that amount of times, it's a pure state. They're going to maintain this elsewhere. Go to the book of Job. This is all in Abrahamic material. He starts off with 7 sons and 3 daughters. Adam and Eve, 3 and 7. Here, 7 and 3. They are very carefully hiding a pattern in the background in repeats that we really don't see. And you want to see another layer right now. Look at Adam and Eve, starts on chapter 3. 3 is one of our numbers. Abram and Sarai, that's the start of a next one. That's a pure state. Chapter 12. 12 is one of our numbers. Isaac and Rebekah, chapter 25. Verse 20, good numbers, pure start points. So we're going to have a macro and a micro numbering pointing system that's going to be showing something that we don't even fathom, but it's there consistently if you can track it. It's tricky. Okay, now having said that, this numbering pattern is existing in the Enuma Elish. I don't find the analog farms to collect it. In Genesis, I find solid analog farms to collect these numbers. Chapter 5, Adam. chapter, I don't recall, was it 11 maybe, Terra? And then the Sodom analog farm. And it's just number repeat things there. 7's going out and grabbing things. 900 is said 7 times. 800 is said 7 times. Those are serving as 7s, grabbing up the 40s, 30s, 20s, things like that. You get down into the Sodom analog farm, we got the numbers again, 50, 40, 5, 30, 20, 10s. Repeated exact amount of times, said in an area where righteous is repeated exactly 7 times. And you could take that entire chunk out and it won't even change the story. It looks like it was just plugged in later to put the numbers in. These numbers were existing in Babylonian works before this collection. That's why I like this collection. We can take this now and go to the Enuma Elish and take a look at what we find there. Okay, so here we are on this. And to me, this is 100%. This is the clincher. If you can, how do I put it? If you can interpret, or if you can find this, or if you can see this and reason through why it is at this level, you will know that this is man-made and that it is shared by people in the background, but we're not privy to it. Okay, there was our Marduk 41 times. We see that? All right, now, what I'm going to do down here is take a look at something. There's a Lady Huber. We'll go down to it. This is right in 1. Yeah, this starts off right in the beginning, in the first tablet. This is where we first run into this. So we're not far into the story. And the problem's happening. Apsu is not in charge anymore. The Rakas gods are acting out. And they gathered about and stood in proximity to Tiamat. That's the inner early self. They were brutal and planned endlessly, both day and night, grumbling and fumbling, all done in the cause of making war. That's our inner turmoil. They called together a council of war to consider battle plans. Lady Huber, who made all, produced an unfailing weapon. She brought big snakes with piercing teeth and vicious fangs. Their bodies she had infused with poison rather than blood. It goes on. I don't need to do the whole thing. Okay, now this is where, watch. She produced it, then she verbalized it. She produced it, then she verbalized it. This should be recognizable as creation 1 in Genesis. God said, and then there was. God said, and then there was. So that's kind of a pattern you see right here. And it's going to repeat. We get down here again. It repeats almost, it's like word for word. Lady Huber, who made all, produced an unfailing weapon. She brought big snakes with piercing teeth and vicious fangs. So this is a version of repeating cycles of pain where it would be like having plagues happening over and over again instead of saying repeated pain in childbirth or, producing bad fruits in every season or something like that. This one is repeating the bad thing over and over again. Now, if we come over here and look too, we also see Lady Huber not only is the bad element, but Lady Huber is repeated exactly 8 times in the same place where we would have first sin and Genesis material. Yeah. So not only do we have our 41 line up with the heroes, but we have Lady Huber, the repeated cycles of pain, the damage, lining up with the sin and punishment from sin as a result. All right, what I'm going to do now is just go through and start doing some things that I already know to do. I'm going to establish some things. Okay, the 3-7 grid is what I saw in Genesis. What I want to do is back up here and see if there's anything resembling a 3-7 grid in the Babylonian creation myth. What I'm going to do is ask this, how many times 3 is repeated? 3 is repeated 3 times in the Enuma Elish. I'm going to ask how many times 7 is repeated. 7 is repeated 3 times in the Enuma Elish. I'm seeing something here that looks a little interesting. Okay? Lady Huber was, we already determined, bad thing. Huber 8. What do we have? We've got some poison. What is poison? 8 times. What about a devil? 8 times. Those are all bad. Do you see how they're so commonly repeated? It's like, okay, that's not an accident. They're repeating very specifically to keep it like that. What have we got here? We've got mantles of brilliance. There's something that is given to whoever's in charge called a mantle of brilliance. Let's see what that is. Is that a good thing or bad thing? Mantles of brilliance. 7 times. Okay, I could keep doing that. The video has gotten already very long. That's the one right there that tells me, aha, that's the one nobody sees, and that's the one right there that's the tattletale. That number repeat system right there, bingo, busted. People in the background are figuring this out, and they're sharing it among cultures, but they know that their people are not going to get along. The Babylonians were first. They created it. What happens to the Jews later on? They go on after the flood, and they go ahead and destroy Babel and move on. This is a way of morphing your religion from the past. It's also a way on the template of saying, I have now left the past behind. I have left my Babylon behind. I have left my early self behind. Meanwhile, what were the Babylonians doing? They were destroying Tiamat and developing a new Babylon. It's going to roll. It's going to roll. You can see the Jews come from the Babylonians, and you can see that the material is exactly monomyth if you can understand it. I think people that can't understand it, that's why it is so hidden. That's why people look at it and go, it's not there, buddy. It's not there. They can't understand the conceptual nature of it, and they think it's true. Or that there's nothing to it at all, that it's just completely garbage, when in all reality, it's all made on one template, the human life template. All right, let me see if I can try to sum up here then. Obviously, to me, Genesis came from the Babylonian works. That the way that the outer carrier is the way the analogs are written make it sound different, but it's nevertheless following a very specific pattern for people who can understand it. If you don't understand it, you carry it. If you do understand it, you turn inward with it. You cease to be the carrier of the material and start to interact with the material. That happens in both cases, despite the fact that they don't sound the same. You can see how creation happens. The creator disappears for some reason, comes back at the same time that the called hero happens. There's a destruction that has to happen with good that emerges on the other side, a pure state, that is exactly what's happening. The exact verbiage, I don't think you're going to find very much of that there. There's enough of it that lets you know what's going on. It's ultimately the concepts that lets you know that they're both monomyths. If you recognize that, you realize they're not historical stories. They're as historical as the Argonautica. And because Crete and the Mediterranean Sea are there does not prove that Jason actually got the golden fleece. We have to understand some things about these stories. That people will call their story true when it's exactly the same kind of story as somebody else's that they call ridiculous. Okay? So the way they sound is different, of course, and the way that they psychologically interact in a population is radically different. Greek myth is entertaining. Religion is something different. They both have the same template in the way out, but they affect people in different ways, and different people need different kinds of controls, different brain types. There are people who need to have the fear of God to know not to rape their children, apparently. Yeah, we're still what proves evolution more than things like that. Okay, well, that's it for this video. The numbering system really right there, that's the clincher. You find that there, suddenly it's like, okay, wait a minute, this is a man-made thing. That numbering pattern, I got videos up on that. It goes all the way down into the New Testament. It's going to keep cross-referencing it. Download Matthew, King James Version. 3 is repeated 12 times. 7 is repeated 12 times. 12 is repeated 12 times. It gets so tight down there, you're like, this never stops. There is something really tight there. We're not even looking at it. We don't know, but we sure think we do. All right. Hope the video was fun and interesting. Hope you survived till the end. It's old stuff that they spent their lifetimes with. This is a short video, really. All right. Take care. See you in the next one.